Hi everyone. This is going to be a video that is for students that have Bio 139 with an online lab. If you have one of my sections that has lab on campus, this video really won't apply much to you. So, first thing, since this is our first lab video, I wanted to do just a little bit of walkthrough of where to find some things in our lab. I did briefly touch on this in the welcome and orientation video, but I want to go over a little bit more here just so I can be sure that everyone knows where everything is. Okay, so what we can see here on the screen is the layout of our Blackboard course. Now, everything for lab is going to be found here within the lab module. Now, right now, the only other class module is block 1. Later in the semester, we will have blocks 2, 3, 4, and 5 appearing here. But always right underneath all of the lecture modules, we will find our lab module. And if you click that, it will expand. There's some getting started with Bio 139 lab, and the Bio 139 lab overview. When you click that, it brings us to here, and it shows us a little bit of information about the course, some course materials, the lab syllabus. Hopefully everyone has found that and read through it. It's very short compared to the lecture syllabus. But most importantly, here's where we find the online lab manual. Now you can open it here, but it's much better if you download it, because if you just open it, the formatting will be off a little bit, and some of the images, some of the numbers do not necessarily appear in the right spot. So it is better to download this manual. That way when you open it, it's going to open with the correct format. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the syllabus. When you open it, it's going to open with the correct format. Let me open here, and the format is much better. I'm going to change the view to one page, and when we scroll through, the formatting is as it should be. You can do it either way. Just know if you open it instead of download it, it will look a little bit different, and some of the images may be distorted. Now, if we scroll down, there's going to be a folder where the lab practicals will be when they're active. Right now we don't have any. There's something called Practice Anatomy Lab that I've just placed a link to here. I'll come back to that in just a moment. And then here we have Lab Exercise 1. This is the only one that's visible to students right now, but as we go, we can see there's a spot that's hidden to you, but it will be where Lab Exercise 2, Lab Exercise 3, on and on. But this week we're covering Lab Exercise 1, Anatomy of Endocrine and Reproductive Systems. So if we open that, we can see there is the Lab 1 overview. If we click that, it shows us the learning outcomes, what we should be able to do as we finish this lab, the activities, what we will need to do during this lab. We can see for Lab 1, there's the histology, the tissues, and other microscope slides of the endocrine and reproductive systems, the reproductive and endocrine anatomy. So these are our models, and some cadaver images, and exploration of key hormones. So these are really the three things that we will be learning in this first lab. We will always have a watch this area. Right now I'm recording the Lab 1 exercise walkthrough. Right now I've got a placeholder coming Monday afternoon, but as soon as I finish this and upload it, you will click this and it will take you to the video that you're watching right now. I've also uploaded a a walkthrough video for the reproductive slides. I've got the testes slide, the two uterus slides, and the ovary slide are all on this video right here, reproductive slide walkthrough. The endocrine slide walkthrough is where I go through all of the endocrine slides for this lab. Reproductive anatomy, I go through the reproductive models, and the endocrine models I go through. So there will really be 5 videos to watch for this first lab. When you have gone through all of lab 1, which we will go through here in just a moment, and after you finish watching all of the videos, there's the assessment. Now, each lab will have an assessment. It could be an activity, it could be just some things that you answer, but it's always going to be something for a grade. Now, the assessment for lab exercise 1, there's some labeling, there's some filling in charts, things like that. Most of them I will have to manually grade. This first one, very, very little. But once I grade it, then your grade will show up. You are allowed on lab exercise assessments to use your book, to use your notes, to use the lab manual, to work in groups. Everybody does have to submit their own if you do work in groups, but you are welcome to use whatever resources you would like. Now, when we get to lab practical exams, those are tests. You cannot use any resources at all, and you have to work on your own. But for each lab exercise assessment, you are allowed to use whatever resources you would like. All right, so let's go to the lab manual. And each lab exercise will have a cover page that tells you, again, what we just went through. What are your learning objectives and what are we doing in the lab? Here there's a little bit of a typo. Appendix A, hormones, in your textbook. I will show you a better way to do this. But let's go through here. Background, we're always going to have just a little bit of what is the summary of the topic or topics that we're covering in this lab. So you can read through this on your own. I'm not going to go through it, but I will point out some of the key terms that we will be looking at. Endocrine system, this is what we're covering in lecture right now. So you've already got an idea of the endocrine part of this lab. We are focusing on hormones. Hormones are the long-term messengers. Remember, in the nervous system, that was short-term messaging. That was something that happens very quickly, but its message didn't last very long at all. The endocrine system takes a little longer to send the message, but hormones last a lot longer, so we have long-term responses, usually related to something with metabolism. Now, here we list the major glands of the endocrine system: pituitary gland, thyroid, parathyroids, adrenal glands, and the pineal gland. We also talk a lot about the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is weird in that it is an endocrine gland, but it is also a neural function for the brain. So we call it a neuroendocrine gland. A neuroendocrine gland because it really does function as both part of the nervous system and the endocrine system. It is nervous tissue, but it makes hormones. Now, there are some glands, the pancreas and the gonads, the sex organs, that have both endocrine function and exocrine function. We talked at length about the pancreas in the lecture. Now, talking about the reproductive system is how an organism, in this case humans, how they carry on the species, how they make more humans. And when we talk about the reproductive system, the main thing that we're going to talk about are gametes. Gametes are the cells that are involved specifically in reproduction. And in females, the eggs are called the ova, and in males, we have sperm. Now, when the ova and the sperm come together, that is reproduction. That is fertilization. So the fertilization occurs, the result is an embryo, a fertilized egg, and that goes on to produce another human. Now, the primary organs of the reproductive system are also called primary sex organs, and these are also called gonads. In females, these are the ovaries. In males, they are the testes. We also have the fact that these organs, not only are they the primary organs of the reproductive system, they also have endocrine functions. They produce the sex hormones, estrogen and testosterone, and progesterone is a secondary in females. So let's go through and look briefly at the slides that you have to know. And I say briefly because remember, back in lab, in Blackboard, we're going to have those videos that I showed you where I do go over each of these slides. So here's the testes slide, the seminiferous tubule slide. In females, we have 2 uterus slides at different points in the monthly cycle. Here is the ovary slide. There's a lot going on in the ovary slide, so I have 4 different views of it. Then we have the endocrine, and there are several endocrine slides. They are all included in that endocrine slide walkthrough video. Here's the pituitary gland, the thyroid gland, the pancreas, the adrenal gland. All of those are covered in the endocrine walkthrough video, so I'm not going to go through in detail in this video. Here we have the reproductive anatomy, so the reproductive models. Here's the male reproductive model. There's going to be 2 views. This is one where everything is intact internally, and then this view, we've removed a part of it so that we could see the internals of some of the structures. There are some things that are only visible in this view. There are some things that are only visible in this view, and then there are some things that are visible in both. And again, I do go through these models in the reproductive model walkthrough video. Here is the cadaver that shows an actual realistic view of those structures. Here's the female reproductive model with the internals intact and the internals taken apart so that we can see inside some of them. And then here's the reproductive model, or I'm sorry, the reproductive of the cadaver. And then here is reproductive cadaver from one of the cadavers that we have on the Newtown campus. Endocrine system model. We have 2 models of the endocrine system. Here they are already labeled, and here they are without labels, a different model. You should be able to label those, and both of these models are in that that endocrine walkthrough video. The third part, hormones, before we get into that, I do want to show you a way that you can practice models on your own. And like I said here, this practice anatomy lab I just opened today. You can access it a couple of different ways. You can get to it directly by clicking this link, or you can go up here to the Start Here module, scroll down to the Mastering A&P student links, click the Mastering Study area. I'm going to click this one so that I can show you a few other things, but this practice anatomy lab is where we're going to go. We're just going to take a little bit longer to get there. So click the Mastering Study area in the Mastering A&P student links, and it's going to take you to the Pearson website. And all of these are ways that you can study. All of these are fantastic things. None of them are required, but they are extra study materials for you. Now that Practice Anatomy Lab link will take you to the same place as this Practice Anatomy Lab link. Here we go. So for this chapter, we have for this lab, we have endocrine and reproductive. You can click either of these. Here's reproductive. Here's the cadaver. Here's an anatomical model. Here's a 3D model. And here's tissue slides. So I'm going to click the anatomical model. And there are 14 different models. Some of them are the same models, just different views. Some of them are completely different models, but you can quiz yourself. You can do a practice lab practical. You can do a self-review. You can show labels. You can show the gallery that shows all 14 different things. But you can go through and practice on these models. So let's do a little quiz. Here's a small view of one of the models, and it wants to know, what is this? So you can guess, is it the secondary oocyte, the primary follicle, the secondary follicle, or the corpus luteum? So you can practice using the models that are in our lab manual and other models. This is a fantastic way to study, and again, you can get to it either by clicking the Mastering Study area or by clicking the Practice Anatomy Lab. If you click Practice Anatomy Lab, it takes you directly to this page. Now, when you get to, let me open our manual back up, this page. So here are the hormones that you are responsible for knowing for lab. I am not going to go over these, and I will tell you why in just a moment, and I will tell you how to find the answers in just a moment. But for each of these hormones, you should know the name, you should know the abbreviation, if there is one. For example, cortisol, we just have cortisol. Aldosterone, we just have aldosterone. So for each one of these, you should know the organ or the gland that produces it. You should know the organ or organs that that hormone targets. Where does it have a function? And what is the function of that hormone at the target organ? For example, let's say calcitonin. Now, if you have already gotten to the thyroid video, hopefully you have. If you've already gotten to the thyroid video, then you already know the answer to these. But calcitonin, what is the gland or organ that produces it? Well, we could just say thyroid, but that is not specific enough. It would be the thyroid follicles. The thyroid follicles, or you could even say the follicular cells of the thyroid gland. You would not just say the thyroid gland, because thyroid has more than one part, and different parts of it produce calcitonin. Others produce other hormones. Now, what is the target organ? Well, calcitonin targets the bones. Specifically, it's going to, over here in the functions, activate or stimulate osteoblasts and inhibit osteoclasts, causing blood calcium to decrease. Now, you will do that for all of these hormones. There's quite a few hormones we can see here. This is not all of the hormones. These are the hormones you are responsible for knowing for this lab. Where do you find all this? Well, there's a few different places. First, in your textbook, in chapter 16, all of these hormones are covered. Most of them have charts, and in those charts, it will tell you the answer to each of these. You could also use the lecture outline and lecture videos from the lecture part of class. Remember, the lecture outline I've already filled out for you for endocrine, or most of it I have. So you can find most of these answers in that outline and the videos that go along with that outline. So make sure to fill this chart out. Again, I'm not going to go through this chart. You do need to know that. Now, there are two hormones here. If you've already watched the posterior pituitary video and lecture, these two hormones have a little bit of something going on that I would recommend noting in this part. They are produced in one structure, but they are stored in and released from another structure. I'm not going to go over what those structures are because I do in lecture, and you should be able to figure this out. All other hormones in the body are produced by a gland and released from the same gland that produced it. But ADH and oxytocin are weird. They do something different. They are produced by one gland. They are stored in and released from a different gland. So make sure to at least note that or know it in your head before putting it on here. All right, so in other labs, I will kind of go through it the same way. I will often have more than one video. So if there is, like this week, be sure to watch all of those videos. Again, this is the lab exercise 1 walkthrough that you're watching right now. There is a reproductive slide video, an endocrine slide video, a reproductive model video, and an endocrine model video. So be sure to watch all of those. And if you have any questions, reach out anytime. All right? Thanks a lot. Take care.